Good afternoon from Germany. Good morning and good evening to those of you who are joining from other time zones. Today's webinar is on the topic of supply chain mapping and traceability. Improving transparency and traceability in the supply chain has become one of the most important things for the garment and footwear industry. Today, we will have a closer look at what traceability means and what it matters for your company. Just a few words about leadership and sustainability. And my background as well. I have more than 30 years of work experience to improve performance at corporate strategic level and at facility level. Leadership and sustainability, we stand out from the crowd by our systematic approach and our drive to change and measurable results. I have worked at Adidas in the role of Head of Environmental Services, responsible globally for environment during several years. And before that, I have worked in the role of Sustainability Director at a Swedish multinational corporation in another sector. We work with companies like ASICS, Mammut, Saleva, and many others in this sector. And you can find our references if you click on this link once you have received the presentation. And let me just give you a brief overview of how to use the GoToWebinar functions. At first, I would like to mention that you are all muted during the webinar in order to ensure best audio quality. But please feel free to send us any questions during the presentation via the question function. At the right-hand side, you can see a screenshot of the question function. Here you can find the drop-down arrow to open the question window, where you can type in your question and send it to us. Maybe it's good to know for you as well that we will provide you with a link to download the presentation and listen to the recording in a follow-up email briefly after this webinar. Let me walk you through the agenda. We have already covered most of the introduction. At this point, it is important to mention that supply chain mapping is the foundation of traceability. Therefore, we will begin by exploring and explaining supply chain mapping in the first section of this webinar, and will then continue by illustrating the concept of traceability in the second section. So we will start with introducing you to supply chain mapping, why it is important for your company. And then we will speak about the implementation steps you should follow and which different success factors there are. We will also present you with a few best practice examples from our industry that you can follow. And then we will also move over to traceability, where we will explain to you what it means and what it is, why does it matter. We will also speak about how it works across the supply chain, and we will finish the traceability section by presenting models for supply chain traceability to you and how you can develop a traceability scheme for your company. And at the end, you will have the opportunity to ask questions and discuss with us. And within the hour, we will end the webinar. Many businesses know that there are negative influences in the supply chain, but many of those businesses do not know how to address them in a systematic manner. And this is where supply chain mapping helps you as a first step to regain control over your business and understand what is going on at every step in your supply chain. You will only have to draw the right conclusions in order to deal with what you find out. Supply chain mapping means following your products and materials through the supply chain. Therefore, you need to establish a documentation structure of all the materials, processes, and shipments that are involved in bringing your goods to market. You do this in order to understand where your products are being produced and where the materials for your products come from. Most of the time, you will need to go further back in the supply chain via your first tier of suppliers, for example, garment or footwear manufacturers, then even further back to perhaps your dye houses and fabric manufacturers. So if you have a look at the following flow chart here, it shows a typical supply chain in the textile sector, but most other sectors have a similar structure set up in the supply chains. So when you are mapping all the players in your supply chain, You can imagine how complex this picture can get. And it becomes even more complex if you source via agents or distributors, because then the agents or distributors, they become between your company and the suppliers. And so you have basically one step, one chain, so to say, in between. And this results in an unclear and confusing structure with potentially a lot of dead ends. And you may not have an overall view of the actual manufacturing entities as well. So you will not even be seeing the tip of the iceberg. And obviously also when it comes to rolling out sustainability programs in your supply chain, if you have agents in between, then you have again one other level of players that you need to work through in order to get to the actual manufacturing sites, which are the most interesting for us. Therefore, the best starting point is when your sourcing department has direct contracts with the manufacturers in the first tier. Then these manufacturers can help you with the next step to reach their suppliers and so on. And in this way, you will be able to understand what is going on in your supply chain. And the main benefits you will recognize are that you are able to in a more simple way, manage your compliance risks, improve your reputation, eliminate reputation damaging disclosures, and expose your sustainable products and materials. So why does it matter? So we saw the benefits, but why does it matter? Well, there are, of course, more reasons. So consumers are becoming increasingly interested in where their products come from, and they are not afraid of sharing their findings on social media. So you may have consumers asking you where your products are produced, and they would expect you to respond by being transparent about your supply chain. You may remember that just a few years ago, there was an outcry actually from a lot of brands when the possibility of publicizing their first tier suppliers was mentioned. At that point in time, perhaps nearly 5-7 years ago, some brands already had publicized their first tier of their supply chain, but many others hadn't. So this was a new phase, new step for many. But now we are actually seeing the first place making public their second tier and even subcontractor suppliers. So there is a whole new range in the level of transparency that we have in the textile supply chain. So knowing your supply chain will also eliminate any fear of reputation damaging disclosures. And knowing your supply chain is essential for managing your compliance risk. It is also beneficial for focusing on your sustainability programs. When you think about your main risks, you will quite often find them in your supply chain and sometimes even further upstreams in your supply chain. So we know that perhaps 80% of your total environmental impact in any case is in your supply chain, sometimes even a larger portion. And when we look at the first tier, let's say garment factories, as compared to dye houses, we also have a difference in the environmental risks in any way. Usually the social risks are quite similar, independent of the type of manufacturing. But of course, as we know, in the environmental area, it really matters what type of production processes you have when it comes to estimating which environmental and health and safety risks you have in your manufacturing. There are many others. There are many other reasons for mapping your supply chain. For example, you may have had a chemical compliance failure in one of your leather products and you need to find the root cause. If you know your supply chain structure, it will save you a lot of time and money. And if you wish to ensure that your programs are well implemented, supply chain mapping is also helpful to see if your efforts are bearing fruit. Furthermore, you could expose your more sustainable products and materials to show them and communicate about them to your customers and consumers. Perhaps you're already thinking beyond the first steps and wish to trace and certify more sustainable materials. This might also enable you to address a new target group. Another reason might be that you intend to improve your relations with your suppliers and ensure fair and stable conditions in the supply chain. This will not only help you improve your reputation with your customers and suppliers, but it will also strengthen the core of your business and increase your profits. So what about the business case and even the financial business case? So let's take a closer look at this picture. This arrangement you see here is a common structure to use for your business case and all your sustainability reports as well. So we did a study some time ago where we researched different studies on what the business case looks like and how to structure the business case for sustainability. And we then made a good approximation. So we basically took all those studies and we defined our structure, which relies very, very much on all those different studies that we had put into our research. And so those 6 different categories, they can actually be divided into 3 groups. Let's begin with compliance and risk minimization. Those 2 criteria here, or buckets if you wish, they would lead to avoiding costs. So if you have a compliance problem, you get a fine, for example, you may have to pay that fine. It may be costly. So by being in compliance, you avoid this fine and this cost. And the same with risk minimization. Taking that example about the product, the leather product, perhaps with a high concentration of chromium-6, you have to pull back that product from all the shelves in all the stores you have worldwide. How much does that cost you? Well, you want to avoid that cost, so that's why you have to minimize your risks. The next 2 are actually both about saving costs. One is, for example, about energy savings. If you are able to save energy in your manufacturing, but also even in your offices, you can very often save also a lot of money. And integrated operations, this can be, for example, drawing from lean management and then being more effective in terms of your resources and about your environmental impact as well. And it could also be, for example, even consolidating the supply chain in order to become more effective, especially then in your supply chain program. So this is then about cost savings, those 2. And the next 2 are perhaps the more difficult, let's say, but also very interesting, because in the next one we have brand and reputation enhancement, and this is about enhancing your brand value, getting a really good reputation as a sustainable brand, and thereby increase your revenues, perhaps increase your market share as well. And the last one, innovation and market development. Here is where, for example, through more sustainable products, perhaps you can also again increase your market share, or you can get in touch with new markets, for example. And obviously, this is not about avoiding costs or saving money. This is actually about generating more revenue. So we like this model very much, and when we work with clients developing sustainability strategies together with our clients, we very often use this model as well to define the business cases for the different projects that we have in the strategies. So a clearly defined business case is essential for your mapping project, and when you develop it, be clear about your objectives and expectations. Make sure to set long-term goals and keep an attractive return of investment in mind. Engage in internal resources and include your supply chain partners in your considerations. What is their business case? They may wish to be known by you, to have more stable relationships, and to work with you to find joint solutions. So remember, teamwork is a recipe for success. And we have, of course, seen that now during the past months, during the COVID crisis, how vulnerable also the supply chain can be. There were at the beginning of the crisis, there were a lot of order cancellations, but then many brands actually stepped back again and reinitiated canceled orders, and suddenly were more interested also in making sure that their supply chain was not affected that much. And we still see, of course, the effects in the supply chain, and I know with many of the brands as well. Okay, so let's move forward and have a look at the implementation steps. So the first implementation step you should include is the identification of products, materials, or groups of suppliers on which you want to focus on. Secondly, you should map your network of agents, vendors, and first-tier suppliers in order to, as a next step, gather your information to identify your second and third-tier suppliers. Then you can map or should map all your material inputs, and you can trace your products back to the raw materials. So 5 simple steps, but obviously the actual process of taking you through those 5 steps is not so easy. So some of the success factors when driving your supply chain mapping project. Collaboration is the key to success. So do not shy away from devoting your time, effort, and resources to collaboration, and start to develop your own capabilities now. In order to make your supply chain mapping successful, you need to understand that you can only accomplish this together with your partners. Thereby, you need to engage with your suppliers. It's extremely important to realize strong supplier communication where you communicate also clear objectives and work with them as a partner. And of course, we have seen over the past decade, I would say, we have seen the process of how many brands and retailers are able to develop much stronger partnerships with their suppliers. So I think we have a really good foundation to stand on. And then it is also important to ensure a fair and regular supplier engagement and track the overall process, of course. Make sure that you still check and verify the information you collect. Check that, for example, the supplier address you have been given actually has the factory and on-site and is not just the billing address. So once you start that work of collecting information from your agents, from your tier 1 suppliers, then you need to, of course, qualify the information you get, and then you build out your network, build out your map of suppliers. Then we have also a few examples of good practice here. So let me show you how supply chain mapping could successfully be implemented and which opportunities and advantages there are here. So here is the example of the avocado store Natura line. All items of clothing of this brand are provided with a traceability code with a track bio-re traceability tool, so a trademark. Every product can be traced from cultivation to sewing. With the cultivation of real organic cotton, they are also strengthening organic farmers as entrepreneurs who are involved and understand themselves as independent members of a community. And on top of that, purchase is guaranteed and bonuses promote their autonomy. So Natura line is, I could only find the website available in German, unfortunately, and this is quite a small company. But we have a few other examples from larger companies in our industry as well. So we have a very well-known and long-standing example, that is the map from Patagonia. Patagonia has made public their suppliers network in a map that they called the Footprint Chronicles. It is a visually attractive map including second-tier suppliers, and you see here a screenshot from the map. And the map includes information about specific projects conducted by suppliers, such as, for example, water saving projects. You also find information about the factories themselves. And so in this map, this is an interactive map You can click yourself in. You see that the black ones here, they are farms, the darker green are textile mills, and the lighter green, they are the factories. So those would be the tier 1, and the darker green would be the tier 2 factories. Another example is Marks and Spencer, and they have also an interactive supplier map. You can drill yourself in here. You see a large number here. For example, if you drill yourself in here, then it will fold out, so to say, and you can then go into the specific factories and find information. So, for example, in this case, with Bangladesh, you see that Marks and Spencer is sourcing from 78 factories, and they have a total number of more than 170,000 workers. And then you can click yourself in. You can here select a factory, or you click on those numbers here if you know already in which region, for example, the factory is. And you can also see then, as I said, the number of suppliers per location, and there is also information about the types of products produced. And we have one more example, and that is a bit of a newer example actually, but very nice as well. It was launched in 2018, and this is also an online traceability tool. It enables users to track journey of products from tier 4, from the raw material suppliers to the finished item in the store. So several steps through the supply chain. And it is available for some of VF brand's most iconic product. And you see the screenshot here. So you can see also in VF's case, they have actually also included their distribution centers. They have the factories, textile mills, and material suppliers. So the yellow ones, the factories, would then be the tier 1 suppliers. All right, so that was our piece about, or the part of about supply chain mapping. So once you're done with mapping your supply chain, you will have the possibility to trace your products and materials in detail. And the traceability of products and materials is becoming increasingly important across multiple industries, and of course, including also our sector, the textile sector. But just another example, as food safety issues kept the food industry on its toes in the past, regulations such as the European Union General Food Law made the industry trace its products and implement special traceability systems that allowed it to identify where its product had come from, where they were going, and also to provide this information to the relevant authorities. This is necessary to ensure consumer health and safety, and the food industry shows that traceability is possible. Therefore, industries such as apparel, information and communications technology, automobile and jewelry have started tracing their products in various ways and pursuing a range of various goals while doing so. So, what is traceability and why does it matter? ISO, the International Standardization Organization, defines traceability as the ability to identify and trace the history, distribution, location, and application of products, parts, and materials. And then, depending on the context, several modifications to this definition exists as well. Traceability is often linked to sustainability, where it's used as a tool to assure and verify sustainability claims associated with commodities and products, thus ensuring good practice and respect for people and the environment along the supply chain. And obviously, for most of us who are on this webinar today, this is our main goal with that. To assure traceability along the supply chain, it is necessary to develop systems that record and follow the trail of products in order to provide information about the components of products and materials, as well as information about transformations throughout the value chain. The success of your tracking efforts can be reflected in increases in product quality and safety, as well as in labels that link back to a proven or certified traceability scheme. As mentioned, traceability schemes have become an important part of the sustainability landscape. They also have the potential to increase the value of your business by building a trustworthy system for your more sustainable products. And As you can see in this picture here, tracking your products support your business to have a better performance by lowering your costs, reducing the lead time, and enabling greater efficiency. It also allows you to gain back control, hence securing your supply and improving the quality of your products. And in terms of risks and reputation management, traceability gives you a greater capacity to manage risks and the opportunity to verify your sustainability claims. And I think this is also an important part of the discussion, because very often we talk about risk management. But to me, risks is actually one piece of a two-sided cake, so to say, because on the other hand, on the other side, you have opportunities. So you always have to manage your risks and keep your risks under control. But on the other hand, to develop your opportunities, utilize your opportunities, build on them, that is something that is perhaps more rewarding and also very interesting to do. So let's not forget about the opportunities we have at in our hands. And moreover, of course, traceability is also key to better compliance with existing regulations and prepares you also for future regulations. So we can see that here. All right, so let's get practical on how does it work. Each traceability partner must perform different roles within the supply chain, but all the players must follow the basic agreed upon steps of the traceability process. These partners can be, for example, authorities, processors, manufacturers, primary producers, carriers, third-party logistics providers, retailers, point of sale, or service operators, warehouses, and distribution centers. So we have a whole universe of different players in here. And in order to achieve traceability and transparency across the supply chain, all traceability partners must achieve what we call internal and external traceability and work together as a team. And we will talk more about internal and external traceability very soon. The traceability data that are exchanged across the supply chain must include the information about who, where, when, what, and what happened. And as can be seen from the figure here, traceability management across the supply chain involves a combination of flow of information with the physical flow of traceable items. So you can see here, we have the physical flow with the blue arrows going down the supply chain towards the end product and the end consumer. And on the other hand, we also always keep the information flowing in the other direction as well. So internal traceability means that one partner receives one or several instances of traceable items as forms of input that go through internal processes in order to create one or several instances of traceable output. Therefore, every traceability partner has to maintain the agreed upon data linking the input into a transformation process, with the output and linking the original and final location after this movement. And external traceability is characterized by a traceable item that is physically handed over from one traceability partner to another. Each partner should be able to trace an item back to the direct source and to identify the direct recipient of that traceable item. And this is called basically the one step up, one step down principle. And depending on the purpose of the scheme, there may be different needs with regards to holding and publishing traceability information. However, the traceable item source and recipient must communicate and record the identification of at least one common level of traceable item within their respective systems. So this ensures an efficient information flow of data when tracing back or tracing forward. In their guide to traceability, the UN Global Compact, the United Nations Global Compact, defined 3 main models in terms of how traceability schemes can trace sustainability claims. And these models suggest different approaches to tracking a claim and assuring it at each point in the supply chain. And the proposed models are differentiated by the extent to which certified and non-certified materials are permitted to mix. In some cases, you may mix them, and in some cases, you may not do that. But also, as well as they are differentiated by the claims that can be attached to the final product. So you see the overview here. We have product segregation, mass balance, and book and claim. And models with the less stringent controls around the handling of certified and non-certified materials are less complex and also therefore less expensive. However, where possible, the type of certification and model of traceability used should depend on the sustainability claims and the materials being traced rather than the cost of implementing the model. So it's basically what type of claim do you want to do, and what is the level of assurance that you want to have, and of course what are the technical possibilities as well. So they will influence the selection that you take in terms of traceability models. And obviously, for example, when we speak about cotton, different cotton programs that are available for more sustainable cotton, they use different models. So they are linked basically to a specific model. So if you wish, for example, to have one specific cotton product or a specific cotton program that you would like to sign up to, they may have already chosen their traceability model that you would then also adopt. So let us go walk through those different models. The product segregation means that certified, for example, organic materials and products are physically separated from non-certified materials and products. And this separation has to be adhered to at every step along the value chain to ensure that the certified and non-certified products are not mixed. So it's not allowed to mix them. As a result, the consumers receive products that can be fully traced back to a certified source. And usually these materials are also 100% certified. So, for example, this is what you can do with, for example, with organic cotton. And then there are 2 different types of product segregation. So we have the bulk commodity and we have the identity preservation. While both models separate certified from non-certified materials, the bulk commodity model allows the mixing of certified materials from different producers who all have to comply with the certification standards. So the identity preservation model does not allow any mixing throughout the value chain in order to provide traceability from a specific plantation or primary processor for the final users. So you see here, the bulk commodity is then a bit weaker in that sense than what the identity preservation is. You still, in both cases, you have to keep the certified material separate. But in the case of the bulk commodity, you need to keep every producer's materials separate in the case of the certified ones. No, sorry, you are allowed to mix them. Sorry, I meant identity preservation. With identity preservation, you need to keep the materials separated, so you cannot mix them. And with bulk commodity, you can mix the certified materials, but you are not allowed to mix them with the non-certified materials. All right. And then we also have another model, and that's the mass balance. The use of the mass balance model is common for products and commodities where segregation is too expensive or not achievable for other reasons. For example, for physically identical products such as cocoa, cotton, or tea. And other than with product segregation, certified and non-certified materials can be mixed with a mass balance model. However, there is one requirement for this, and that is that the exact volume of the certified materials entering the value chain must be controlled, and an equivalent volume of the certified products can be sold as being certified. As a result, customers may not know whether their specific share of the product contains certified or non-certified materials or a mixture of both. So if a brand would do this, for example, they would know that they would take a certain amount of certified material into their supply chain, but they don't know exactly where the certified material goes into which products. So they can only claim basically at a company level. They cannot point to specific products and say, yeah, here we have 100% of this certified material, for example. And one example is UTZ, the UTZ certification. It offers the mass balance system in order to boost sustainable production. And this way, more farmers are able to benefit from the advantages of sustainable farming, which might support them in increasing the supply of certified products. So this is also an approach that some schemes like UTZ certified use in order to lower the entrance level, so to say, for the farmers. So another approach is the book and claim model. And this model differs a lot from the other two, as it does not seek to have traceability at every stage in the supply chain. This model is used when the traceability of certified products is, for whatever reason, not fully possible within the supply chain. Book and claim relies on the link between the volumes of certified materials produced and the number of certified products purchased at the end of the value chain. So certified and non-certified materials, they flow freely throughout the supply chain. And when these mixed materials are traded as being non-certified, the company can obtain sustainability certificates for the volume of certified materials it is putting into the supply chain. And this right to claim a certified source is then traded via a trading platform. The certificates are purchased from companies that want to make sure that their sustainability claims are there, that they can claim sustainability, but without having really sustainably sourced products. So by doing that, they support sustainable production through buying certificates. Yeah, so a lot of theory about that. And I would also like to say that I think that what we have covered today is already a lot of theory, but there are a lot of other aspects related to traceability as well. So let me just also give you a brief outlook of where we think that that we should move on in terms of research, etc. So we also need to attack complexities and risks for bribery. So the documentation of traceability, it always carries the risk of falsification and counterfeit. So when you just have paperwork following the materials and the products through the supply chain, those papers basically can be faked. And here, digital traceability solutions may be the answer. And we know that there are several such systems available, at least in the testing phases. So here are some examples from Tracer, blockchain technology, for example, RFID or barcodes are just a few examples of digital traceability solutions. And now we are coming to our end of this webinar, and I just have some interesting news for you. So we have written a white paper about the business case, and we are launching it today. So when you receive this presentation, you can go and download the business case for free, of course. So you are welcome to do that. And I also wanted to say something about our services. So we offer many services that are connected with the topic traceability, and we would love to support you in those areas. And from supply chain mapping, traceability schemes, over strategy consulting, and down to HIG-FEM and SLCP verification, ZTHC, zero discharge of hazardous chemicals trainings, and much more. So if you are interested in getting to know us better, then please contact us and we can discuss more about how we can support you. And now I would like to open up for questions. So let me see if we have any questions here. Someone is asking about how to access the map. That was from the best practice examples. When you receive the presentation, there are links included to the websites where those maps are available. Okay, any more questions? So we also have a question here, a bit more complex question. Traceability is traditionally linked to quality and a must of ISO 9001 and other quality systems. How do we synergize traceability in quality and sustainability? So perhaps if you could expand your question a bit there, and then we can see if we can have a discussion about that. We also have the question about which digital way of traceability we see as the best idea so far. We cannot give you a really specific answer there. There are many solutions, and there are also many service providers providing different traceability systems. So it's not possible to point to just one here. Any more questions? We have one more. How is digital traceability being used and accepted today by auditors? Well, auditors, if the system is working and they can use this digital traceability system instead of the paper documentation to test the assurance of the claims, then for the auditors, it should be acceptable to use this, and should also be, I think, with a higher assurance level. One more question, is HIG index linked with traceability? No, it is not directly, and so only indirectly, because the HIG index is constituted of many different elements. So there is the HIG-FEM, the Facility Environmental Module, the SLCP, the Social and Labor Convergence Program. There is a Brand and Retail Module. There is a Product Module. There is the Material Sustainability Index. And all of those are, of course, interlinked. And if you would have the information from all of those portions of the index, then you would actually be able to pull out a lot of information about your supply chain and your products, but it would not do traceability, so to say, for you. Do you have any SOP of traceability? No, we don't have that, and not anything that we can share at this moment. Yeah. Do you think that blockchain is the right technology for a sustainable traceability system, taking into account its enormous energy consumption? Yeah, it's difficult to say. I cannot judge there. So sorry for that. Any further question? Okay. Yeah, another question. Will you arrange the same training for FSLM, so which is SLCP? Yes, we will, and we have had. So we have had one training for SLCP, and we are also offering deep dive into SLCP one-day trainings. So please reach out to us if you are interested specifically in the SLCP or FSLM program. Okay, great. Yeah, another question. Did the COVID situation have a specific influence on traceability in your experience? I cannot say that we have studied this or have done any research on that specifically during the COVID situation, but I can imagine that it has had that also due to all the disrupting events that we have had in the supply chain, where many countries have been in lockdown, many countries have had, or many suppliers have had orders that were cancelled, etc. And so obviously that situation hasn't made it easier for brands and suppliers to make sure that they continue to assure their traceability. Good. All right. So thank you so much for your questions. Wait a second. I think there was one more now here. Let me see. Nope. All right. Great. So with that, I now only want to continue and show you our team here. And this is actually not the entire truth because we are growing as we speak. We have a few new members to our team, both in Germany and globally. And we also have our contact details here. So here you can see my email and my phone number. So please feel free to reach out to us if you have a question or also a comment, of course. And with that, I would like to close this webinar. And I would also like to point out, as soon as you leave this webinar, you will be pointed to a survey. And if you could just please complete that survey for us, it's just feedback for us, and it's really valuable for us to get that feedback. Good. Thank you so much for joining and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Bye.